Something's going wrong in the neighborhood. Why do we see further than we should? All around us people unaware, lied to and deceived without a care. There simply is no curve inside, and you know we don't spin all day and night. It seems they want our minds flooded with lies.
Who you gon' call when the horizon flattens out? Go ahead, call them up, see what that's about. We can go around in circles trying to find us out, but if you're looking for the truth, you got to find it out. NASA can't go to space, so we hit the roof. Get it? Hit the roof. And it all came to light with 200 proofs. Now I'm just really sick of people lying to me. So when I tell the truth, don't come crying to me.
The fact is, the Earth is flat and motionless. You have been taught from the earliest ages that you live on a spinning ball, that NASA has sent men to the moon,
And you are the result of a Big Bang explosion which created everything out of nothing. Yet nothing could be farther from the truth.
The pictures and videos presented to the public by NASA and other government space agencies are as real as a Hollywood motion picture and as scientific as science fiction. Science facts, on the other hand, prove the flat Earth. There are hundreds of proofs and scientific experiments which have conclusively shown the Earth to be a stationary plane. But you have never and will never hear about these heavily censored experiments in our controlled media. Measurements have been repeatedly taken throughout history until modern times to test the Earth's supposed curvature. And every time have proven what our eyes and experience tell us to be true. The Earth simply does not curve downwards. This mythical curvature exists only in the fisheye lens footage they constantly film, and the fake CG images of Earth they constantly propagate. The spinning globe and every argument used to defend it is simply pseudoscience masquerading as truth.
Millions of people worldwide are waking up to this incredible rediscovery. I encourage you to please explore this fascinating subject for yourself.
Something else I want to clear up is flat Earth is not a new phenomenon at all. But we're talking about the Sumerians, the Chaldeans, the Hebrews, the Egyptians, the Chinese. So this is not some kind of new psyop on the internet.
The geocentric flat Earth model dominated from the beginning of recorded history all the way up into the 1600s, and though it's mostly propaganda, even the Flat Earth Wikipedia contains a bit of truth. Many ancient cultures subscribed to a flat Earth cosmography, including China until the 17th century. Now let's look at an article I found that supports this. The ancient Chinese accepted the Earth being a flat geocentric, and that an umbrella-like covering surrounded it, which was similar to the beliefs of the Greek, East Indian, Egyptians, Norse, and Germanic, as well as the Aboriginal people of the Americas. The Chinese astronomers believed that heaven takes its body from the yang, so it is round and in motion, and that the Earth takes its body from the yin, so it is flat and quiescent. The brilliant astronomers of China held this unchanging belief until the Jesuit missionaries came to China in the 17th century. Alberto Rivera, a former Jesuit priest, claimed the goal of the Jesuit order was to create a one-world religion by influencing all institutions of thought. Their goal, I believe, is not to make everyone belong to just one church, but for all churches to adhere to their cosmology and thought form. By taking over the sciences, they can cut out any greater divine beliefs in the creation of Earth. The most interesting thing about that is the Jesuit order was founded in 1540, during a time when the Earth was still depicted like this. Earth in the center, with the wandering stars moving around us, surrounded by the firmament, just like all ancient cultures. And 100 years later, this is what was being pumped out. By the Jesuits, of course. After the Jesuit order was established is when the heliocentric programming began.
From the beginning of recorded history, and for thousands upon thousands of years, cultures across the entire world all believed the Earth was flat. Their various cosmologies and cosmogonies differed in slight ways, but their overall geographies and astronomies were incredibly consistent and in fact virtually identical. The Earth was a stationary plane, void of any motion or curvature, flat across its entire expanse, except of course for hills, mountains, and valleys. The North Pole was the magnetic monopole center point of the flat Earth, with Polaris, the North Pole star, situated directly above. Polaris was the only motionless star in the heavens, with all the other constellations revolving perfect circles over the Earth every night. The stars were divided into two categories, known as the fixed stars and the wandering stars. The fixed stars were so called because they were observed then, as we can observe today, to stay fixed in their constellation patterns, night after night, year after year, century after century, never changing their relative positions. The wandering stars, what are today referred to as planets, were so called because they were observed then, as we can observe today, to wander the heavens, taking their own unique spirograph-like patterns, making both forward and retrograde motions over and around the Earth during their cycles. The sun and moon were both of equal size, and they too revolved over and around the motionless Earth, as immortalized in the Chinese yin-yang symbol. The sun and moon were much closer to Earth than supposed nowadays, and each shined with their own unique opposite lights, the sun's being warm, golden, drying, preservative, and antiseptic, and the moon's light being cold, silver, damp, putrefying, and septic. The sun and moon, as though connected to a magnetic maypole, made alternating spiral journeys over and around the Earth every year. The sun began its journey at the Tropic of Capricorn at the winter solstice, where it made its fastest and largest circle over the Earth. For the next 3 months, every day the sun slightly narrowed its path and slowed its speed until by the spring equinox the sun had spiraled its way from the Tropic of Capricorn to the equator. Then for the next 3 months, again, every day, the sun continued to slightly narrow its path and slow its speed until the summer solstice, when the sun made its smallest, slowest circle around the Tropic of Cancer. Once the sun reached this innermost circle, like the ribbons and dancers around the maypole, the sun would then begin its opposing, widening, quickening journey back to the Tropic of Capricorn. For the next 3 months, every day the sun slightly widened its path and hastened its speed until the autumnal equinox, the sun had spiraled its way from the Tropic of Cancer back to the equator. Then for the next 3 months again, every day the sun continued to slightly widen its path and hasten its speed until the winter solstice, when the sun made its largest, fastest circle around the Tropic of Capricorn, and the annual journey began again. The moon had a similar yearly path, revolving over and around the Earth, but unlike the sun, which constantly changed its speed to keep a consistent 24-hour day, the moon's speed never changed. So depending on its latitude, the moon was observed then, as we can observe today, to take approximately 24.7 to 25 hours per cycle. This is why at different times and places during each month, we can see the moon in the morning, afternoon, or night. This is also the origin of old fairy tales, such as The Hare and the Hedgehog, or The Tortoise and the Hare. The hare, like the sun, begins the annual race full of energy, excitement, and ego, declaring himself the definite winner, and gets off to an immediate head start. Meanwhile, equally confident in his seemingly lesser abilities, the humble, slow, and steady tortoise moon begins as well, allowing the hare to lead. As the race carries on, the cocky hare tires and slows down, or takes a nap, at which point the tortoise overtakes him. This is analogous to the moon reaching the Tropic of Cancer before the sun each year and beginning its return journey. When the hare reaches this halfway point of the race, he realizes his lackluster attitude has resulted in being overtaken by the slower tortoise, and begins to speed up again. Then, for the remainder of the race, the sun picks up speed day by day, gaining on the moon, but ultimately losing as the slow and steady tortoise reaches the finish line before the hare and wins. So for ancient man, Earth and Polaris were the two immovable center points of the universe, around which the sun, moon, and other stars all revolved in a dome-like shape. Some cultures believed in a literal, physical, solid dome or firmament to which the fixed stars were bound. Other cultures mythologized the axis mundi as the world tree with Polaris at the center and all the other constellations forming the branches. In these flat Earth depictions, the North Pole occupied the center point, and south was all straight lines extending outwards from there. East and west were not straight lines, as is assumed nowadays, but were in fact circles, just like all lines of latitude and the paths of the celestial bodies. The southern circumference of Earth was surrounded by a gigantic wall of ice, 150 to 200 feet above sea level, holding the interconnected oceans in like a World Cup. Beyond the ice wall, some cultures claimed a firm barrier existed through which no human could penetrate. Other cultures believed there were entire worlds and other civilizations existing beyond the Antarctic ice. Currently, and for the past half-century, there has existed an international Antarctic treaty preventing all independent exploration of Antarctica. Pre-approved guided tours exist which take visitors to a few coastal regions of Antarctica, but no independent exploration of the continent is allowed. Sailors like Jarl Andhoy have been caught attempting to explore Antarctica and threatened, turned around at gunpoint, fined, and jailed for violating this militarily enforced international treaty. As a result, the public currently has no way to confirm or deny the seemingly fantastical claims of ancient man concerning what may or may not exist at the southernmost extremities of the Earth. We can, however, confirm that this 200-foot ice wall surrounding the southern circumference of the Earth most certainly exists. We can confirm that Polaris is indeed the only non-moving star in the sky. All the fixed stars indeed rotate perfect circles around Polaris while remaining stuck in their relative constellations night after night, year after year, century after century. The wandering stars, or planets, do indeed wander the heavens, taking their own unique spirograph-like paths when charted from a geocentric perspective. The sun and moon are indeed observably of equal size and revolve over and around us in daily cycles. Just as the ancients observed, the sun's annual path does indeed travel from the Tropic of Capricorn at the winter solstice, to the equator at spring equinox, to the Tropic of Cancer at the summer solstice, back to the equator at autumnal equinox, and finally back to the Tropic of Cancer at winter solstice. The sun's light is indeed warm, golden, drying, preservative, and antiseptic, while the moon's light is indeed cold, silver, damp, putrefying, and septic. A thermometer placed in the sun's light will always read warmer than a thermometer placed in the sun's shade, while a thermometer placed in the moon's light will always read cooler than a thermometer placed in the moon's shade. plant and animal substances exposed to sunlight quickly dry, shrink, coagulate, and lose their tendency to decompose and putrefy, whereas plant and animal substances exposed to moonlight will quickly show symptoms of putrefaction and decay. Last but not least, just as the ancients espoused, the Earth is observably motionless to all our senses, and the horizon remains perfectly flat as far as the eye can see. Not only does the horizon remain perfectly flat 360 degrees around the observer, but whether at sea level, the top of Mount Everest, 35,000 feet high in an airplane, or even at over 100,000 feet high, the highest any amateur hot air balloon has ever flown, the flat horizon actually rises to the eye level of the observer all the way up. On a globular Earth, no matter how large it is assumed to be, the horizon would remain where it was, and the rising observer would have to tilt his head downwards further and further the higher they rose to see the steadily falling horizon. Many people will be shocked to know that to this day, every single scientific experiment ever devised to show the alleged motion of the Earth has failed to do so, or given evidence of the opposite, that the Earth is indeed motionless. And every attempt ever made to measure the alleged curvature of the Earth has failed to do so, or given evidence of the opposite, that the Earth is indeed flat. Fast forward to 1522 AD, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan became the first person in known history to successfully sail around the world. This circumnavigation of Earth soon became and continues to be touted today as absolute proof of the spherical Earth theory. If Magellan was able to sail east to west around the entire world and return to his original starting point, surely the Earth cannot be flat and must be a globe, right? Wrong. Just as a compass can place its center point on a flat piece of paper, trace a circle either way around, and return to its original starting point, so can a ship or plane circumnavigate a flat Earth. The only kind of circumnavigation which could not happen on a flat Earth is north-southbound, which to this day has still never been done. Both the North Pole and Antarctica are military-enforced no-fly and no-sail zones due to restrictions originating from none other than the United Nations, the same United Nations that haughtily uses a flat Earth map in their official logo and flag. In 1773, Captain Cook became the first modern explorer known to have breached the Antarctic Circle and reached the ice barrier. This expedition offered an exciting chance to find proof of either the flat or globe Earth models, because Captain Cook intended to sail completely around Antarctica looking for inlets through the ice wall. If the Earth was indeed a globe 25,000 miles in equatorial circumference, as the heliocentrists claimed, then a complete circumnavigation of Antarctica would be approximately 12,000 miles. During 3 voyages lasting 3 years and 8 days, Captain Cook and his crew sailed a total of 60,000 miles along the Antarctic coastline, never once finding an inlet or path through or beyond the massive glacial wall. Captain Cook wrote, "The ice extended east and west far beyond the reach of our sight, while the southern half of the ocean was illuminated by rays of light which were reflected from the ice to a considerable height." Later voyages by Captain James Clark Ross and Captain George Nares in the 19th century further confirmed Cook's findings. Ross's expedition spent 4 years and 5 months in heavily armored warships, failing to find an entry point beyond the southern glacial wall. And Nares spent over 3 years circumnavigating Antarctica, taking an admittedly indirect course, but clocking in nearly 69,000 miles total. If Antarctica truly was the tiny ice continent claimed by globe Earth proponents, all of these expeditions would have ended years sooner. In addition to this, many Antarctic explorers, including Captain James Clark Ross and Lieutenant Charles Wilkes, using globe Earth projection maps, wrote in their journals perplexed at how they routinely found themselves out of accordance with their charts, stating that they found themselves an average of 12 to 16 miles outside their reckoning every day, later on further south increasing to as much as 29 miles per day. These huge discrepancies experienced by explorers the further south traveled are usually attributed to increasingly strong storms, winds, and currents, but if that were the case, they should have just as often found themselves ahead of their reckoning, which they never did. In 1783, the hot air balloon was invented, and for the first time in recorded history, people were able to float miles above the Earth's surface and see for themselves once and for all whether or not the Earth was flat or a globe. To many people's astonishment, as high as they rose, the horizon remained perfectly flat 360 degrees around them and rose to the level of their eyes all the way up. J. Glaisher wrote in his Travels in the Air that, quote, "On looking over the top of the car, the horizon appeared to be on level with the eye, and taking a grand view of the whole visible area beneath, I was struck with its great regularity. All was dwarfed to one plane. It seemed too flat." M. Victor Emmanuel, another hot air balloonist, wrote that, quote, "Instead of the Earth declining from the view on either side, and the higher part being under the car as is popularly supposed, it was the exact opposite. The lowest part, like a huge basin, being immediately under the car, and the horizon on all sides rising to the level of the eye. As stated previously, this is only possible on a flat plane." In the late 19th century, mostly thanks to the experiments, books, and lectures of an English inventor and author named Dr. Samuel Rowbotham, a flat Earth renaissance began sweeping the world. Rowbotham's findings, beginning with his 1864 book, Earth Not a Globe, an experimental inquiry into the true figure of the Earth, proving it a plane without axial or orbital motion and the only material world in the universe, caused quite a stir in the scientific community, and thanks to 3 decades of his effort, the shape of the Earth became a hot topic of debate around the turn of the 19th century. Dr. Rowbotham conducted several experiments using telescopes, spirit levels, and theodolites, special precision instruments used for measuring angles in horizontal or vertical planes. By positioning them at equal heights aimed at each other successively, he proved over and over the Earth to be perfectly flat for miles, without a single inch of curvature. In his most famous series of experiments, Rowbotham traveled to Cambridge, England, where there is a 20-mile canal called the Old Bedford, which passes in a straight line through the fenlands, known as the Bedford Level. The water has no interruption from locks or water gates of any kind and remains stationary, making it perfectly suitable for determining whether any amount of convexity or curvature actually exists. If we were living on a ball Earth, every pond, lake, marsh, canal, and other large body of standing water, each part would have to comprise a slight arc or semicircle curving downwards from the central summit. If the ball Earth were truly 25,000 miles in circumference, as claimed by heliocentrists, then spherical trigonometry dictates the surface of all standing water must curve downwards an easily measurable 8 inches per mile, multiplied by the square of the distance. This means along a 6-mile channel of standing water, the Earth would have to curve 16 feet 8 inches downwards from one end to the other, and or dip 6 feet on either end from the central peak, depending where the measurement is taken. Rowbotham tested first by standing in the water holding a telescope 8 inches above the surface, while his partner rowed away from him in a small boat with a 5-foot-tall flag attached. If the Earth was indeed a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, by the time the boat reached Welney Bridge 6 miles away, the entire boat and flag should have been completely invisible, hidden behind a 6-foot-tall mass of curved water. In reality, however, every time tested, the entire boat and flag remained visible from start to finish. In a second experiment, Dr. Rowbotham placed 7 flags along the edge of the water, each 1 mile distant from the next, with their tops positioned 5 feet above the surface, and stood with his telescope behind the first. If the Earth was a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, each successive flag would have to decline a definite and determined amount below the last. The first and second flags established the line of sight. Then the third should fall 8 inches below the second, the fourth flag 32 inches below, the fifth 6 feet, the sixth 10 feet 8 inches, and the seventh flag should be a clear 16 feet 8 inches below the line of sight. Even if the Earth was a globe of 100,000 miles, an amount of easily measurable curvature should and would still be evident in this experiment. But the reality is, not a single inch of curvature was detected, and the flags all lined up perfectly as consistent with a flat plane. In 1870, one of Rowbotham's supporters, an English scientist of the Royal Academy named John Hampden, offered a public wager of £500 to anyone who thought they could prove the Earth spherical by repeating the Bedford Level experiment. Alfred Russel Wallace, a fellow English scientist, ardent evolutionist, and personal friend of Charles Darwin, accepted Hampden's wager, and the two met with referees to decide the matter at the Bedford Level. The original plan was to repeat Rowbotham's flag experiment, but after hours of attempting to align them one on each mile marker, upon looking through the telescope, quote, they could not even judge which was which, let alone decide whether the line of sight along them was flat or curved. Heated debate ensued, an angry quarrel followed, and the experiment descended into a farce. They called it a day, but a week later reconvened, this time Wallace setting new parameters for the experiment, which had never been tested or approved by Rowbotham or Hampton. Wallace hung a large calico sheet from the Old Bedford Bridge with a thick black line painted across its center, and positioned his telescope 6 miles south at Welney Bridge at the same elevation. Then, halfway between these 2 points, Wallace placed a long red pole topped with a marker disc designed to fall in line with the black painted marker and telescope. All of these he placed at a masonically significant 13 feet 3 inches above the water. Wallace's plan was to view the marker disc and black line through the telescope, and if the middle marker appeared below the line of sight, this would be taken as proof of the water's flat surface, and if the middle marker appeared above the line of sight, it would be taken as proof of Earth's curvature. Hampton immediately took issue with this new method of allegedly determining curvature, but begrudgingly accepted to continue. When viewed through the telescope, the center marker fell a tiny bit below the telescope crosshair, and the far marker on the bridge fell a tiny bit below that. This result was not expected by either party, but Wallace quickly claimed it proof that the Earth was curving downwards, while Hampton claimed the results to be in accordance with the law of perspective over flat surfaces. This time an even more heated debate ensued, until Wallace refused to speak another word with Hampton, gave him the silent treatment, and even had the police escort Hampton from his hotel room before leaving town the following day. The referees for the wager decided in favor of Wallace, and the money was given to him. In response, Hampton immediately published a 16-page pamphlet denouncing Wallace as a liar and cheat, called "Is Water Level or Convex After All? The Bedford Canal Swindle Detected and Exposed." Another fellow English author and flat earther, William Carpenter, also present during the experiment, wrote his equally scathing 30-page review of the swindle entitled "Water Not Convex, the Earth Not a Globe," demonstrated by Alfred Russel Wallace on the 5th of March, 1870. Hampton later took Wallace to trial and sued him for his £500. The court formally decided in favor of Hampton that the bet was invalid and returned his money in full. Next, Hampton immediately reissued his challenge to Wallace, increasing the wager to £1,000 and inviting Dr. Rowbotham to attend. This time the experiment would be conducted as Rowbotham had originally done, standing in the water with telescope held 8 inches above the water, observing a boat with a 5-foot flag attached sailing 6 miles away from Welch's Dam to Welney Bridge. When the day of the wager came, poor weather prevented them from completing the experiment, so they postponed, met more bad weather, and postponed again. On their third and final attempt, before heading home with the weather still overcast, they attempted the experiment. Unfortunately, shortly after reaching the halfway point, the boat became indistinguishable beyond the haze, and the bet was called off. The boat and flag were visible, however, for the entire 3 miles. In 2015, a group of flat earthers once again repeated Rowbotham's experiment at the Bedford level, with similar results. They detected no curvature and saw the boat beyond the halfway marker, but became obscured by poor weather before reaching the full 6 miles. In 1871, after getting massive amounts of pressure from the public to address these claims from flat Earth proponents, Royal Astronomical Society President George Airy devised an experiment which he hoped would once and for all prove Earth's axial motion and forever silence the rabble-rousing flat earthers. By first filling a telescope with water to slow down the speed of light inside, then calculating the tilt necessary to get the starlight directly down the tube, Airy planned to measure the speed of the telescope, and thereby the speed of the Earth, by extrapolating the amount of tilt needed to keep the starlight coming in straight. The experiment, however, would go down in history and forever be known as Airy's failure, because every time he repeated it, Airy found the starlight was already coming in the correct angle with no change necessary, proving that the stars move relative to a stationary Earth and not the other way around. Airy had meant to prove the heliocentric theory, but instead devised an everlasting proof of the geocentric model. In 1887, American physicists Albert Michelson and Edward Morley performed an experiment to determine Earth's speed through space, or what was then called the ether. By passing light through two pathways, one in the direction of Earth's alleged motion and the other at right angles to it, the light traveling with the Earth should have taken longer to return than light traveling at right angles to it. To the surprise of Michelson, Morley, and the scientific establishment, however, no difference whatsoever was detected, even after repeating the experiment several times in different places. After Samuel Rowbotham's death, Lady Elizabeth Blunt, an English author, flat earther, vocal vegetarian, and anti-vivisectionist, founded the Universal Zetetic Society, which attracted thousands of members and published a journal called The Earth Not a Globe Review for several decades. Many other prominent flat earthers of the time also continued doing their best to spread the word. John Hampton continued publishing his own work and reprinted all of Samuel Rowbotham's material. In 1885, William Carpenter published his famous 100 Proofs Earth is Not a Globe. In 1892, Alexander Gleason released his New Standard Map of the World as It Is, which remains to this day one of the most accurate flat Earth maps ever created. He had hopes it would completely replace globes and Mercator maps the world over, but unfortunately his map's influence was short-lived. The next year, in 1893, Gleason published his flat Earth tome entitled Is the Bible from Heaven? Is the Earth a Globe? Does Modern Science and the Bible Agree? Which gave many flat Earth proofs and also explained his wonderful map. In 1899, South African flat Earth author Thomas Winship published his excellent work, Zetetic Cosmogony, evidence that the world is not a rotating revolving globe, but a stationary plane circle. 1903 marked the beginning of airplane travel, which, had it been invented in Copernicus's era, would have destroyed his spinning ball Earth fantasy long before takeoff. When hot air balloons were first invented, people were told the reason they cannot simply float in the air and wait for the spinning ball Earth to bring their destinations to them was because gravity somehow stuck the entire atmosphere and everything in it in place, dragging it along at 1,000 miles per hour so uniformly that we can't see it, feel it, hear it, or measure it in any way. Once airplane technology evolved so that we could fly at comparable speeds to the Earth's supposed rotation, however, it became immediately apparent that the Earth and its atmosphere could not be constantly rotating 1,000 miles per hour west to east. Simply put, if the Earth were constantly spinning eastward 1,000 miles per hour, then airplane flight durations going eastwards versus westwards would be significantly different. If the average commercial airliner travels 500 miles per hour, it follows that westbound equatorial flights should reach their destination at approximately 3 times the speed as their eastbound return flights. In reality, however, the differences in east and westbound flight durations usually amount to a matter of minutes, and nothing near what would occur on 1,000 mile per hour spinning ball Earth. For example, flights eastward with the alleged spin of the ball Earth from Tokyo to LA take an average of 10.5 hours. Therefore, the return flights westwards against the alleged spin should take an average of 5.25 hours, but in actual fact, take an average of 11.5 hours. Building on Michelson and Morley's experiment, in 1913, French physicist Georges Sagnac again proved the existence of the ether and the stillness of Earth by using a beam splitter to send light in opposite directions around a path, recombining them, then observing their interference fringes, first while stationary, and then while rotating the entire experiment table 2 revolutions per second. The changes in interference patterns between the moving and non-moving trials proved that the light, and therefore the Earth, was stationary. In 1914, William Westfield wrote his geocentric classic, Does the Earth Rotate? No! And Gerard Hickson's masterpiece, Kings Dethroned, A History of the Evolution of Astronomy from the Time of the Roman Empire up to the Present Day, was published in 1922. In 1925, the Michelson-Gale experiment again vouched for a stationary Earth. By the 1930s, an eccentric Christian flat earther named Wilbur Glenn Voliva was attracting widespread publicity around the world thanks to his American lecture tours and daily radio broadcasts from his personal station, which could be heard all the way to Australia. Voliva famously founded and built Zion City in Illinois, a town of 6,500 people, all of whom were Christian flat earthers. Zion City even had its own schools and churches which taught flat earth cosmology. In the spirit of Rowbotham and Hampton, throughout his life, Voliva offered an open-ended wager of $5,000 to anyone who thought they could disprove the flat earth. Until his death in 1942, there were no takers. in the late 50s, a sign maker from Dover, England named Samuel Shenton, in the spirit of Robotham and Lady Blunt's Zetetic Society, created IFERS, the International Flat Earth Research Society, and began giving lectures on television, in newspapers, to youth clubs and schools about our flat, motionless Earth. Shenton discovered the writings of the late 19th century flat Earth authors mentioned previously and made it his mission to spread the Zetetic message as far and wide as he could. With NASA's supposed satellite launches happening, people constantly questioned Shenton about satellites proving the globe Earth, to which he would always reply, "Does sailing around the Isle of Wight prove it is spherical?" When NASA claimed to have put the first man in space, Shenton said from the beginning that it was all photo and video trickery. When John Glenn supposedly orbited the world in 1963, Shenton even sent him a free IFERS membership with a personal message saying, "Okay, wise guy." Shenton knew that John Glenn, two-time US Senator and one of NASA's first astronauts, was a lying Freemason, just like his heliocentric forefathers from Pythagoras to Copernicus, Kepler to Cavendish, along with most all of NASA's astronauts. In 1970, Freemason and philosophy professor at St. Thomas's University, Leo Ferrari, created the Flat Earth Society of Canada, which he soon shortened to simply the Flat Earth Society. Unlike Samuel Shenton's International Flat Earth Research Society in every way, Leo Ferrari's Flat Earth Society treated the entire subject as a deadpan joke, making a mockery of it, and even creating several intentionally false flat Earth arguments. For example, Leo Ferrari would always bring a pumpkin-sized rock with him during interviews and lectures, claiming he brought the stone back from the edge of our flat Earth. He would say, with a huge smirk on his face, how his boat had fallen over the edge, but he was luckily saved by hanging onto this rock. Clearly, treating our flat Earth in this tongue-in-cheek way discouraged people from taking the matter seriously, and creating this fake Flat Earth Society was the Freemasons' way of mitigating Shenton's IFER's genuine threat to their global deception. In 1971, Samuel Shenton passed away, and the American former airplane mechanic Charles K. Johnson took his place as president of IFERS. Charles and his wife Marjorie, like Lady Blunt and many of the original Zetetic Society members, were not only flat earthers, but outspoken vegetarians and anti-vivisectionists. Charles and Marjorie maintained a periodical called The Flat Earth News for many years, where they printed articles about NASA's lies, geocentricity, flat Earth, and vegetarianism. Unlike Leo Ferrari and his mock society spreading disinformation, Charles Johnson was a genuine voice speaking out against the evils of the world. In 1974, when Johnson heard of Ferrari's budding organization, he decided to contact him and wrote a cordial letter requesting further information about his society, to which Ferrari never replied. 2 years later, Johnson wrote another polite letter saying how he was delighted by the prospect of a like-minded campaigner, and said how it was a very happy day when he learned of Ferrari's society. Quote, "I feel sure at the core we cannot be too far apart in aims," Johnson wrote. "I do try to practice what I preach, to think and seek and search out reasonable ideas and concepts." He closed saying that he could hardly wait to hear from Ferrari and hoped very much he would please reply. After 6 months without a response, Johnson wrote one more time explaining again his sole purpose to enlarge his view and getting and holding on to the facts, which would benefit himself and in time the rest of the world. He requested a reply and a copy of Ferrari's FES magazine. In conclusion, Johnson signed, "Thanks from the bottom of my heart," in advance, but warned that if Ferrari insisted on ignoring him once again, quote, "I will then know for sure that you are some kind of enemy of the flat Earth work." Eventually, Ferrari did reply this time, but not with a message or magazine as requested. He simply enclosed an FES paid application form. Johnson investigated Ferrari's organization further and found that he was using, quote, "the flat Earth idea as a gimmick to entertain and promote the atheistic society." From then on, Johnson worked hard to expand his IFERS and constantly for the rest of his life exposed Ferrari's FES, calling him a false prophet, guilty of muddying the waters of truth. Near the end of his life, tragically, Johnson's house burned down, along with all the flat Earth materials he and Shenton had collected over their lifetimes. Until his dying day, Johnson claimed the fire to be the result of arson by a NASA agent he had seen snooping around. In 2001, Charles K. Johnson died, and having lost all his flat Earth material and correspondence in his house fire, the IFERS was officially finished. Leo Ferrari's farcical Flat Earth Society, on the other hand, continued operation as usual, making a mockery of the Flat Earth subject. In 2004, the reins of FES presidency were handed over to Daniel Shenton, of no relation to genuine Flat Earther Samuel Shenton, who, true to Ferrari's example, maintains the Flat Earth Society website to this day, where they purport such fantastical, purposeful disinformation as the flat Earth disk constantly rising upwards forever through the universe to account for gravity. Their sole purpose, as Charles Johnson correctly stated, is clearly to poison the well and muddy the waters of truth. In 2008, teacher and author Eric Dubé, that's me, began a website and published a book titled The Atlantean Conspiracy, which exposed, among many other things, Freemasonry, the fake moon landings, geocentricity, and even featured a quote from IFER's president, Charles K. Johnson. At the time, I had already read Samuel Rowbotham and William Carpenter's old 19th century Flat Earth books, and though personally still on the fence regarding the shape of the Earth, I was confident they were correct about the location, or geocentricity, of Earth, so I wrote about it. In 2009, after watching Alex Jones interview and praise several NASA astronauts on his show, I wrote an article and sent a message to him and his producers about the moon landing hoax, and included a link to Samuel Rowbotham's Flat Earth book for them to read. Alex even mentioned this on air the next day, and called me a flat earther who thinks he's covering up some Atlantean conspiracy, the title of my book and website.
The Earth being flat, that's clearly ridiculous, though I've actually been contacted by some flat earthers saying I'm covering up the fact that it's some Atlantean conspiracy.
For the next several years, I continued writing books and articles about various conspiracies and worked on building a huge social media presence. By making multiple accounts, adding as many friends and followers as possible, joining and posting to as many groups and pages as possible, over the course of a few years, I began building up very large followings on Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, Twitter, StumbleUpon, Pinterest, Sue, and many other sites. To give you an example of their efficacy, you can see here my main Google+ account with over 135 million views, and my secondary one with over 87 million. In November of 2014, after years of researching and writing, I released my book, The Flat Earth Conspiracy, the first pro-Flat Earth book written in nearly 50 years. I simultaneously released a Flat Earth Conspiracy documentary on YouTube, began giving radio interviews, and published several influential articles on the subject, and soon restarted Charles Johnson's IFERS, the International Flat Earth Research Society, and published my most successful book ever, 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball, which has now been translated into 12 foreign languages and read by millions worldwide. These simultaneous actions, my intentional exploding of credible flat Earth information onto the internet all at once, which I had been preparing for the entire year before, are undoubtedly the catalyst behind the exponential growth curve seen beginning here. Within a very short space of time, the Flat Earth keyword saw a 600% rise in activity, and Google search results jumped from a few thousand to over 21 million. By New Year's Eve 2016, our new IFERS had gained over 3,000 members and was receiving 50,000 hits monthly when it was suddenly and without warning or explanation deleted from the internet. As the administrators and myself quickly worked on salvaging our material and creating a new site, the obvious parallels to Johnson losing everything in his NASA agent-initiated house fire were noteworthy. Around the same time, 2 disingenuous Flat Earth channels issued 2 fraudulent copyright strikes against me, which I managed to overturn by filing legal counterclaims against them. YouTube itself began a program of regularly unsubscribing old subscribers of mine and lowering view counts of popular videos. Shortly after that, Facebook also decided to jump on the Eric Dubé censorship bandwagon by deleting my account, all my pages, and giving my Atlantean Conspiracy group directly over to a team of Freemason shills who still administrate it to this day, filling the group with nothing but death threats to me, pictures of Masonic goats, and ridiculous belittling memes. After re-registering for new accounts and accumulating my friends lists again, Facebook has now deleted 2 more profiles, and I am currently on my 4th, still trying my best to spread the word. In 2016, the movement continued to grow, with many more genuine flat earthers taking up the reins and exposing the truth online, as well as many more disingenuous continuing to poison the well with misinformation. The new IFers began thriving with more monthly visitors than ever before. Many new Flat Earth YouTube channels began creating and mirroring excellent content. Now, at the turn of 2017, I am truly pleased with the rapid growth of this wonderful Flat Earth movement, and I encourage everyone to please help speak out, share this video, and spread the good word as we look forward to a future where humanity is finally free from this grandest of all deceptions.
From the earliest known depictions of the Earth, it's always been flat and enclosed by a dome. The Egyptians, Norse, Hindus, Mayans, Incas, Navajos, Hebrews, etc. all knew that the Earth is flat and covered by the firmament, which is basically an impenetrable barrier encapsulating the flat plane. The flat Earth model dominated for thousands of years. It wasn't until 1543 that Nicholas Copernicus proposed the heliocentric model of the universe. But even with that, flat earthers and the flat Earth model still went strong all the way up into the 1900s. We see proof of that with books like Zetetic Cosmogony by Thomas Winship, published in 1899, Terra Firma, The Earth Not a Planet, Proved from Scripture, Reason, and Fact by David Wardlaw Scott, published in 1901, or even Kings Dethroned by Gerard Hickson, published in 1922, where the author details all of the problems with heliocentrism and the mistakes made by people like Copernicus, Einstein, Newton, Kepler, etc. So we see from the beginning of time all the way until the 1900s, the flattened stationary Earth was going strong. In all honesty, flat Earth has never died. In a magazine from August 1931 called Popular Science, explorer Auguste Piccard went on record stating, "It seemed a flat disk with an upturned edge after ascending 10 miles high on a balloon." 10 miles is only a little over 50,000 feet. Today we have balloons going up to 121,000 plus feet, which is almost 23 miles. And the Earth still shows nothing but flatness. Not to mention, the horizon remains at eye level at that height, something that would not be possible if the Earth was a sphere.
This is a newspaper that you can find at the Library of Congress online. You can go back and search newspaper articles, all kind of things by any date range you want. And I'm going to reveal the date on this here in a minute, or after I read some of this. But as I've been saying, what many people have been saying, everything that you've been told, everything that you have learned, virtually everything, it has been a lie. Now, one of the things that a lot of people want to say is, you know, for 400 years they've known the Earth was a spinning ball in space. And for you guys now to bring it up in 2017 is ridiculous, or 2015 is really when it really started kicking off again. And that is simply a lie. Like so many things in history, you've been sold what I call a bill of goods. I want you to read this. I want to read this article to you, rather. The title of this is, "Says Earth is Round, and He May Be Thrown into Prison." And this is from something, Condition of Affairs in England. Sir John Gorst, accused of intention to teach false precepts. Listen to my words here. This John Gorst is being accused of teaching false precepts in the school system. And remember, whatever is taught in the school system, in one generation that becomes truth, whether it is or is not. Keep that in mind. It says the city of Portsmouth is excited. I've been to Portsmouth, England. In any case, let me read this. I want you to let this sink in as I read it. It is painful to read that Sir John Gorst, the head of the British Educational Department, is in serious trouble and has been threatened by Mr. Ebenezer Breach and other taxpayers of the city of Portsmouth in the Kingdom of England with prosecution under the Impostors Act. It seems that schools of Portsmouth have been teaching the damnable and heretical doctrine. Get that again. The damnable and heretical doctrine that the earth is a sphere. Sir John's attention has been called to this dissemination of seditious and treasonable doctrine. That's how bad they thought it was to teach the ball. Seditious and treasonable doctrine. Many places, if it's sedition and treason, they will execute you. I believe that's still in the books of the United States. Treason and sedition, I believe you can still be executed for that. But he has refused to correct the abuse. So they've gone to this teacher, told him to stop teaching about the ball being a sphere. And he, I guess, refused. Ebenezer and his friends now know, of course, that the earth is flat as a pancake. Let me read that again. Ebenezer and his friends know, of course, that the earth is as flat as a pancake. They have been patient with Sir John, and day after day have allowed the false teaching regarding the shape of the earth to go on, but can stand it no longer. They can stand it no longer, they say, to see their children corrupted with this most heretical doctrine, as the complaints call it in this protest. So, here we go. The date is Saturday, October 21st, 1900. So this was settled 400 years ago, was it? Not exactly. 1900, guys. Little over 100 years ago, it was thought to be seditious and treasonous to say that the earth was anything but flat as a pancake.
The Earth is not a spinning ball flying around the sun and through the universe at supersonic speed, but flat and stationary plane, just as we perceive it to be. There's no measurable curvature. Water always finds its level. Earth is 71% water, therefore, through the physics of fluid mechanics, is unquestionably a contained, flat and level plane. This lie was told to you along with the Big Bang Theory to make you feel insignificant and easily controlled. You are not free, just free range. We are all born tax-free, born on big, gigantic tax farms. Your birth certificate is the receipt of your enslavement. We are just human livestock. There is no human race, just a rat race. Taken from your true identity, emotionally, psychologically, manipulated. We live in a world where money comes before people, a world where money rules sanctioned by the elite. You need to take the red pill and wake to the job. Wake up. Earth is not a spinning ball, but a flat and stationary plane.
Wait with whom you're spending the day. Get your gaze off tomorrow. Now come on, me, because you can be better than that. Let me get the better of you. What can be better than that? Life's not about what's better than. You can be better than that. Let me get the better of you. What can be better than that? Life's not about what's better. Sometimes things can be hard, but you should know by now. They come and they go, so why, oh why do I look to the other side? 'Cause I know the grass is greener, but just as I do know. Life's not about what's better than. Take time to give thanks and make time to be giving. I'm gonna stop and think twice about the way that I'm living. I didn't say a kind word, am I proud of my action? You know, a job well done gives me satisfaction. Oh, can I earn your trust, now your love and affection? Just one step at a time, now in the right direction. I'm gonna aim for the sky, keep my feet on the ground. Raise my voice to the heavens, make a joyful sound. Check it out. Can I sing for my supper? Can I play for my rent?
So where do you think you're going to go?
So that's what the scientists tell us. The astronauts and scientists. That's what they say.
Astronauts and scientists?
Yes, I'll believe them.
What have I said to you that astronauts don't go to space?
I'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised? Yeah. Do you know there's no real photographs of Earth from space?
No.
They're all photoshopped.
Okay.
And I'm confident you've never seen any curvature, have you?
Sorry?
You've never seen the curvature of Earth, have you?
No.
The curvature, you've never seen it?
No.
The horizon's always flat, but you're on an airplane 90 feet. So all your natural observations will tell you you're not spinning. Everything's flat. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Can I ask you what shape do you think the Earth is?
Earth is changed because of the light,
yeah.
sunlight.
So what shape did you say it is?
What?
What shape is it?
Shape. Not circle, it's
Joint.
Joint. Joint. And why do you think it's that shape?
Why do I think like that?
Yeah.
Because the physics teachers and the staff says like that.
Yeah. So they've told you it's that shape, and
yeah.
you believe that?
Yeah.
It's second-hand information?
Yes.
So it's a belief then, is it?
Yeah.
Because you can't verify it for yourself?
Sure.
When you upload this video, when you upload this video?
I've got another one's uploaded before that.
Check it out.
Work hard every day now to give it my best. Grab hold of fear and negativity and lay them to rest. I know my time here's important, can I do the right Practice patience and forgiveness, feel the joy that they bring. Well, can I lay down tonight without a feeling regret? I know the love that we give becomes the love that we get. Yeah, you hear what I'm saying, making sense to you? If you feel it in your heart, you might just want to sing too. Joyful sound. Bring it down. I don't want to sound preachy, make it feel all wrong. I want to write some kind of lyrics, sing a feel-good song. It's kind of hard to explain, it's a feeling I get. We're making music, making love, and getting both feet wet. Every piece of the puzzle snaps tight in the groove. I close my eyes, breathe deeply, and let my feet move. And I feel a little better for speaking my mind. For good vibes and circulation, see who they find.
Anywhere south to go.
But the lens itself had a slight curve on it. But what they should have done was take a picture of a spirit level at ground level to show you what a straight edge will look like at high altitude. But it certainly is. That's when they clock on.
Yeah, right. Right, so you've done serious investigations.
No, I've been doing investigations for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for about half an hour, you're constantly doing it like really, really hard, just so you can get it to go more interesting, and then you go straight to it, and everything's supposed to come out. Yeah, so, and then, yeah, but that's the last part, is the more
against them.
Yeah,
I totally
that's what
understand.
we're doing.
I totally understand that what you're saying, but I'm saying my suggestion is that you should use that as your benchmark.
You look for the names of all these black people, Scottish and Irish ones. Look for those names in the land registry. Couldn't find any of
Everything spins on my head. Going back to the textbooks, what they first told you. Gotta take another look at Earth, cause it doesn't move. Look across the oceans, look across the land, and please, if you see that curve, can you tell it where I am? They'll try to tell you stories you need to understand. That's not round, it's just a big flat piece of land. Although it makes no sense, they say we're spinning round. How can this be true when my feet stay on the ground? Cause if one day you wake up, see that earth ain't no more.
Can I give you one of these?
And you look in the distance and see
Thank you. Red pills are free. It's okay to ask questions about where we live, right? Nothing wrong with that. You guys feel yourself spinning around on the earth?
Sorry, sir.
You feel yourself spinning?
Thank you. I'll check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, do I want to, hold on 1 second, baby. I don't want to play, hold on, baby. I don't want to play because I'm on the phone with my daughter, but good luck. Do you believe, wait, hold on, boo. Do you believe it's flat?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the top 10 proofs are in there and also some good resources.
Okay, you know what? Because I don't 100%. So keep this for. I don't
No,
want to waste it.
that's what it's for. It's to be wasted so that you can compare what you know with what we know and see what you think.
Okay, you know I'm 100% the other way.
That's the point. That's the point.
Okay, then I don't do that.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Have a good one.
You too.
Okay. This could be your best day ever. Open your mind. You want to look into this? At least to laugh at it. Good man.
Are you guys serious or is it?
100% serious, man. Like a heart attack. Look into it. For real. Yeah, man. Earth's flat, dude. Somebody out there cares about where they live, right? You care where you live? Do we live on a spinning ball? You want to check it out? There's 10 proofs in there that you can debunk on your free time if you want and find out why we're so crazy.
Water has never been seen with the curve, so to think that we live on a ball is absurd. I know it sounds crazy to say the Earth's flat, but the curve can't be found, and that's a plain fact.
Question the shape of the Earth?
Thank you.
It's good to ask questions, right? Good to ask questions. Top 10 proofs in there. Check it out. You want another one?
Yeah, I do actually.
All right.
Could I get some presents?
Yeah, most definitely. Nice. I gotta grab more flyers. Hey, you guys ever question the nature of reality? Do you know where you live? Check it out. There's the top 10 proofs in here, so anybody who can debunk this is obviously smarter than us. So I'm alright.
I'll take one.
Alright, challenge, my friend. Good. Looking into things. He's got an open mind. He's good.
So you guys are flat earthers?
100%, yeah.
Dude! So you think
We're the real deal. We're the real deal, yeah. But do you have any questions about
so
flat
like,
Earth?
you think it's flat?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so what's you think it's a ball, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your biggest proof that you live on a spinning ball?
I think that because no one has fallen off the edge of the Earth.
So
there was an edge.
Yeah, let's say there isn't an edge. How do you know you live on a ball?
Well, if it's flat,
Yeah.
wouldn't there be an edge?
Oh, so you're saying space is your proof? Is that what you're saying, or?
No, like if it's flat,
Yeah.
then like you would fall off the edge. Yeah, but if you don't believe that we're in space, the universe, then it covers everything.
Yeah, I mean, Earth is all there is. Yeah, so that went over pretty well. They were really open to actually listening to us talk, so that was awesome. And we had a chance to kind of break down and some misbeliefs or misunderstandings of what the flat Earth is all about. So it's good. I'm really happy that we did that.
So we got our signage set up right here. For all you global warming people, we're going to use flat Earth. Doesn't mean we should hang on to our sign. A lot of people out here already playing volleyball, so we're back in the area that we were at before a couple days ago. So here we are, posted up shop right next to the tree here, just a little bit adjacent to where I was the other day. I got coffee and I got donuts, so
We got our office pretty well set up here. We got some music that I'm gonna play, and we're just gonna hang out for a little bit. I said, you fancy a chat? No, sir, not even close. It's about the Earth being a level, motionless plane, not a ball spinning in outer space. Do you tend to prescribe to a spherical model in outer space?
No, I don't know anything about this.
Okay. Well, I got some takeaways for you. I'd love for you to, you know, just check it out, have an open mind. I got
absolutely.
YouTube channel on the bottom.
These for my son.
Yeah.
And what's the, is that free too?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, so then that goes in. So your thesis is what, to educate?
Yeah, just to kind of provoke thought.
got the voice to change a nation, but you're biting your tongue. You spent a lifetime stuck in silence, afraid you'll say something wrong. If no one ever hears it, how we gonna learn your song? So come on, come on, come on, come on. You got a heart as loud as lion, so I let your voice be tamed. Baby, we're a little different, there's no need to be ashamed. You got the light to fight the shadow, so stop hiding it away. Come on, come on, I wanna sing, I wanna shout.
Do you think you can stop filming me?
I'm not afraid. They can read all about it, read all about it. lines. So I let your voice be tamed. Baby, we're a little different. There's no need to be ashamed. You've got the light to fight the shadow, so stop hiding it away. Come on, come on. I wanna sing, I wanna shout, I wanna scream till the words dry out. So put it in all of the papers. I'm not afraid. They can read all about it, read all about it. Oh.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make an announcement. Has anyone heard the Earth is flat? Anyone on the train? NASA lies about everything. Research it yourself. Fair enough?
If there's anything to learn from this little exercise is that the reactions here are great. There's kind of nothing to be afraid of. Flat Earth, man, check it out. You haven't researched it. Your kids are gonna laugh at you for thinking you live on a sphere. Who said there's an edge?
It's like part of the fuckery with the government, right? Why do you think they pretend to go to space but they don't?
It goes pretty deep real quick, but it's actually a hoax to keep up the myth that we are on a ball in space. The globe is a deception. Scarcity. Yeah, exactly. Research air bubbles in space, because they film it in a pool, all the spacewalks. But here's the thing, they get people discussing the moon landing one as if that's like a conspiracy or something. But what they don't let on is that all of it. Hashtag flat Earth, that's where it's all going down, bro. These guys think it's a joke, that's the point. But if anyone has proof direct proof of curvature, prove it.
Exactly.
No one can though, that's the crazy thing.
People are so accustomed to what they've been absorbing for
Yeah.
their entire lives, so it's difficult to wrap your head around. I can't say that I jumped on it right
Oh, you
away.
got squirt guns on your bike?
Oh no, they're...
Oh!
These are my laser cannons to defend against my enemies.
People were asking about these signs and I was explaining to them
what's up with
what's going on. You know who Chris Hadfield is? The astronaut?
Yeah, I think so.
Space travel is essentially a big magic trick. It's all like a Hollywood thing. It doesn't actually happen. These astronauts are all propaganda. They fake that they actually go up there.
Yeah, he doesn't think we've been on the moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude, we've been on the moon.
You haven't researched it?
Yeah, how do you know I haven't researched it? How do you know I haven't researched it extensively? You've just met me now. How would you know?
What does air bubbles in space mean?
Pardon me? Pardon me? Pardon me?
Air bubbles in space.
I've never heard about that before. No comment. Not going to waste my time. We've been on the moon.
Keep thinking what you want. Have a good one. Like, straight up triggered. They fake all space travel.
I disagree.
The Matrix ain't gonna melt itself, boys.
Or you may have seen it on your way to work or school or just driving around. A new billboard has some people thinking about the Earth.
And asking the question, could the Earth be flat?
Digital billboard, a theory most of us have accepted that the Earth, of course, is round. But those behind this billboard say, well, we've all been tricked.
Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. While they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper.
Did you know that the earth is flat? Hey, did you guys know that the earth is flat? It's true, you're lying. Come on, let's Google search. Look with your eyes. Don't trust them. Hey, y'all! Did you know that the earth is flat? The earth is flat. Look it up. Google search.
Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution, oh no. Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution, oh, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know?
How you doing?
Hey, did you know the earth is flat?
Did you know the earth is flat?
No, it's not.
It is.
Poor people gonna rise up.
You gotta look it up.
Get watch
do you believe the earth is flat? I got a question for you. And I need an honest answer.
Poor people gonna
do you
rise
believe the earth is
up.
flat?
Take their share.
Why? And with a school teacher that it's a ball of water, right? But some scientists, good science, but water always finds its what? Its own level. So how can it bend? It don't make sense. It gotta be flat. It gotta be flat.
Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution, oh no.
Right here, there's always a water bottle handy. See that water? Is it curving? Is it bending? I'm talking about water right there. Is it level? Is it level?
Relative to the ground, right?
Just level.
Yeah, sure.
Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh